Eid Mubarak. Good evening. This episode's about debunking and myths, the immigration rhetoric across this country. Some of it does have xenophobic rhetoric. Some of it has racial elements or tones to it, undertones to it. And we had an episode previously, and we had a sort of ordinary white working class man come on and really, he didn't talk with facts and figures, but through emotion and observations. We have a special guest today, an immigration solicitor. Welcome,
Thank you.
Brother Ahmed. Thank you very much for coming on. He owns Regis Law Solicitors. So if you do need any immigration advice or anything to be processed or fast-tracked, this is the man. Congratulations with the firm. I think,
Thank you.
again, that's a feat within itself.
Exactly.
You've watched the previous episode, right?
I did, yes.
You did. And I think you called me or messaged me saying that there's so many things that you were quite irate and
Yes.
you wanted to debunk a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think I retorted back to you, these are his emotions and feelings. And a lot of people, well, not so a lot, people from that demographic, particularly the reform voter, one can generalize as they generalize, they have these feelings and emotions because this is what they perceive on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely.
And it's very important that if a white person, an English working class person, were to visit Luton, Bedford, Bradford, whatever it may be, East London, and they see a huge South Asian diaspora, and other ethnic minorities, they think, oh, where's our country gone? What's happened? Our landscape's changed, our parades have changed. But ultimately, every action has a reaction. So when you allow in the 60s and 70s and 80s, our grandparents and fathers come into this country, they naturally did bring their families over, and we are a strong family unit.
Yeah.
Something that the English, not so much as now, but the British would be able to relate to maybe in the 40s, 50s and 60s, where they really did, and I think to some degree they do, appreciate the nuclear family and having kids. And if you do bring immigrants in from the second and third world, these people are quite conservative and they will have families and they will procreate. So naturally, if you let in 10,000 of us, we will procreate and there'll be 20,000 soon.
Yeah.
And that's the byproduct of immigration.
Yep.
I've said an awful lot now, and I'm very happy to have you on. I'll be asking you
Thank you.
several questions.
Sure.
About what you do on a day-to-day basis, what sort of clientele you get, and we'll start off with that actually.
Sure.
So post-Brexit,
Yep.
what sort of client have come your way, and what is it that they're looking for or need your assistance with?
Yeah, brilliant. Before we start, can I just, what you've just said is, in 50s, 60s, 70s, the UK allowed people to come here. It wasn't so much of the UK allowing people, it's the UK needing people to come over.
Sure.
So they needed us, they needed our grandfathers and forefathers to come over and fix the country. Because obviously after World War I and World War II, UK was devastated. Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, subcontinent at the time, gave millions of people, soldiers, to come fight the wars that the UK fought. So I wouldn't say that the UK allowed people to come in. I would say that the UK needed us to come in, and we came and helped as much as we could. And the byproduct of that would be that their children stayed, and now they're providing immense amount of positive effects onto the UK. So that's that. In terms of post-Brexit, what kind of clientele I had. So I've been in immigration since 2017. So about 8 years, thereabouts. So my immigration journey started after Brexit. So from experience, post-Brexit, it was very much your usual spouse visas. So if you've got a British person or a settled person in the UK, they want to bring their spouse from, let's say, Thailand, India, Pakistan. They will come to us and they will ask us what the requirements are. We would advise them, and then we would take them through the process of applying for a spouse visa. Now, one of the myths is that the immigrants who've come to the UK, they bring their family over, which is true. But most of my clients were actually white British who were married to people from foreign countries, a bit like Nigel Farage, who's married to a German citizen.
German, okay.
And it's ironic that he applied for a German citizenship the day after we voted for Brexit, which is ironic to the max. So, so my main bread and butter, you could say, will be white British applying for spouse visa to bring the spouse over. In 5 years' time, they will apply for indefinite leave to remain for their spouse, and then they apply for citizenship. So that was mostly what I did post-Brexit. After Brexit, it was very much the Europeans started to come and ask for assistance with their settled or pre-settled statuses. There was a lot of information given by the UK government, but to a normal Joe, it was hard to digest. They didn't understand it. So they would come to us, ask us, can you explain what pre-settled, settled status is? And we explained, and now I wouldn't say the immigration law is balanced. I would say it's very much the EU is on the same level as non-EU immigrants. So they have to apply for the same visas as non-EU immigrants would have to apply.
Interesting. I think one of the things that I can pick up on there is that you've got English indigenous people, as one would put it, applying for their foreign brides, so to speak, men that are applying for their foreign brides, and they can bring them over.
Yep.
But it's as and I don't want to jump the gun here, one of Reform's policies within their manifesto is that if you're a student, a foreigner that's come to this country to study, and you're pumping tens of thousands of money into the treasury because of it, you're not allowed to apply for your extended family or your wife, etc., etc. But that happens, and you know, I wonder what Reform's policy would be around if an English person, white Englishman, or British person like you and I were to apply for, if for argument's sake, a foreign family member or bride, whatever it may be, right? So it's quite interesting to see how they're going to address that and how they will avoid being discriminatory. Because it's quite easy to be discriminatory. And to be fair, I think we live in a world now with political correctness gone to one extreme, and now that's been binned, but we've gone completely and swing the opposite way now. And people are speaking their minds regardless of who they offence and what harm they cause. And some of it borderlines on inciting hatred and violence, which is, you know, which should be unacceptable in all societies. Anyway, I went off on a tangent. If you look at your screen now, we've got the statistics of small boat migrants. So presumably refugees. And if you look at the countries, and for the audience on the screen, these are statistics for 2024. So Afghanistan, Syria, Iran, Vietnam, Eritrea, Sudan, Iraq, Turkey, Yemen, Kuwait, and others. So Afghanistan is the highest figure in 2024, so 5,919, followed by Syria, Iran, and so on and so forth. One of the things that I can automatically pick up on is if you look at all of those countries, or most of these countries, most of them have been through a war in the last 2 decades, or are going through some kind of suppression or repression in their country, and they've fled with legitimate reasons. Now, one would automatically, and the audience, my audience are not stupid, they can automatically make the correlation between these countries, foreign policy of Western countries, and that having direct correlation.
Absolutely.
So please talk to me about this.
Yeah, no, of course, I have to agree with what you've said. I mean, if you look at Afghanistan, the UK had a direct contact with the Afghans. The conflict went on for 20 odd years. And how did it end? We pulled all our forces out, and the people who were in charge before are in charge again. So they left a mess behind. So I understand why Afghanistan, Syria, NATO is involved. Iran, it's not just that they've been at war. It has a lot to do with our foreign policy. So Iran's under immense sanctions. So as well as that, you've got the Sunni Shia conflict there as well. So a lot of my clients who come from Iran, they're fleeing prosecution from not just the minorities or the public, they're escaping prosecution from the government. So they come over, they apply for visas, or they apply for refugee status. So that's what. Before I go off on my tantrum, one of the things I wanted to say that a lot of people are under the impression that when refugees come over and claim asylum, that is illegal. It's not. Okay? When a refugee comes to the UK and claims asylum, they are not an illegal immigrant. They have a legal right to apply for asylum in the UK. The other thing that your previous guest mentioned was that, well, why don't they apply for asylum in the first country? There's no law to say that they have to apply for asylum in the first country that they land in. One of the reasons, and this is from personal experience from the people that I've spoken, the real refugees, well, they say, Hamad, we want to come to the UK because we only speak English. We don't speak French or German. We speak English, and that's the gift that the imperialism has given. So we can't, or the Brits can't invade and take everything from a country, and then when they want to come over, because they speak English, and I mean, I was born in Pakistan, I spoke English there and then Urdu. When they come over and then they say, well, no, why aren't you going and applying for asylum in France or Germany? Saying that, Britain is not even in the top 3 countries for the refugee that it takes in Europe. Germany far exceeds how much UK takes. I think in the whole world, UK takes about 1% of the refugees. The other thing that people say is, well, why don't they go to the country next door? I think Turkey has taken the most amount of refugees. I know Pakistan has taken about 3 million Afghan refugees. And these are not countries that you consider first world. They're second or third world countries. And they're developing countries, I would say. I don't really like the term second or third.
It's quite derogatory.
Exactly.
I'd agree.
So they're developing countries that have taken far more refugees than UK could ever imagine of taking. So it really frustrates me when I listen to people like your previous guest, and they have these feelings, but there's no facts behind it. Unless they get educated, and I'm not talking about getting education, going to university. I'm talking about getting your facts from primary resources. So I'm not talking about Wikipedia. I'm talking about actual BBC quotation, something like that, where journalism has been done according to the actual journalists. Then fine. Then bring those facts and figures forward and then say, well, my feelings and my expressions are based on these things. So yeah, no, I'm not surprised looking at the statistics here that Afghanistan, Syria, Iran has one of the highest migrants who cross over to the UK.
Just simple maths from the top of my head. The total of that population that have come in through boats crossing the English Channel in 2024, I think it sort of equates to about 20,000 people.
Yeah.
5, 4, 4, 3, about 20,000 people roughly. Now that's a fraction
Absolutely.
Of this population. If you were to divide 65, 70 million by 20,000. And one can make an educated assumption here that, look, Yemen's on the list, Iraq's on the list, Sudan, there's a current civil war in Sudan now, Eritrea, Vietnam, there's a massive war against them, Iran, Syria, Afghanistan. So all of these countries, they have one thing in common, but more open, and I think you touched on it. It's quite profound, actually. The fact that Britain, being an imperialistic state, that's old news now, right? That's in the past.
Is it?
Has atoned, I'd like to think has atoned, made reparations, and has given up that sort of land. Now, other people might feel differently because the remnants of it, people are still feeling up until today. I get that. I get the argument. But what Britain has done, particularly with foreign policy, has changed course. So it's not we're kind of come and we're going to divide and conquer, so to speak, or we're going to rule over your empire. I mean, you had Prince Charles going to Canada saying that we're going to give you autonomy, or indicating that, and subtly talking against America taking over Canada. The point I'm making here is this: Britain's policy. Britain is arguably America as side partners. They own this franchise of liberalism that they export to the world. And English, as you've said, is the main language of the world. It's not Arabic, it's not Chinese, and so on and so forth. So when you're exporting, I asked George, my previous guest, this, what is it that we export? On paper, it's financial services, but we export an ideology, a way of life. Liberalism and Westernism. And when Britain exports Westernism, it does not only have a cultural benefit but an economic benefit as well. When you have British brands or American brands or Western brands in Pakistan and all over the world, that's only because there is a concerted effort in ensuring that the rest of the world aspires to this sort of liberalism, this Western civilization. So you've got to speak English. Because we're at the pinnacle of civilization, and English is a language you have to speak. You have to like Western brands. You have to celebrate Halloween. And you see these foreign countries, and you see, like, I mean, somewhere like Bangladesh, Pakistan, maybe not so much, but developing countries that are celebrating Halloween and Valentine's Day. That goes completely contrary to their religion. But yet, the British and Western ideology, they've done a brilliant job in exporting this way of life and ideals. So naturally, if I was born in, I don't know, Syria or Iran, and I didn't like the dictatorial regimes that they may have, as other people put, would want to go to a democracy where I can walk around naked, so to speak. I mean, it's all right in this country. You've got those naked people marching, don't you?
Yeah.
You have that parade. What's it called?
I'm not too sure.
There is anyway. But, you know, in this country, everything goes, provided, and again, the sanctity of the individual being sovereign is paramount, and it takes precedent in this country. And a lot of people around the world, some people despise it, but these people that are coming through the boats most probably want that.
I mean, to an extent, I would have to agree to disagree.
Sure.
I don't think anyone from Afghanistan, Syria, and Iran are coming because they want to get naked on our streets. I think what they want is the bombs to stop dropping on their houses.
Sure.
They want their children to be well fed.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't agree with that. Touching on the basis of, especially Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So we have to ask ourselves, why do they come on small boats? Why do they risk their lives, their children's lives, their family's life to come on small boats that they know might capsize and it might die? Why do they do it? No one ever answers that question. Well, I can tell you why they do it. They have no other way to get to the UK, right? You've got Ukraine war with Russia.
Yeah.
The UK actively implemented Ukrainian settlement scheme where Ukrainians can apply to come to the UK and they'll be housed within the general public. There is nothing like that for the Syrians. There's nothing like that for Iran. There was something like that for Afghanistan, and there is Afghanistan's resettlement scheme. But if you go on BBC, you will see that the Ministry of Defence actively blocked, I think it was about 1,500 applications, purely based on they didn't feel like it, or they felt like they might say too much of what happened in Afghanistan. But I think that's a different conversation.
So are you saying that it's not a concrete policy, one rule for all, it's more whimsical?
No, it is. It's very much to do with, as you mentioned, the Western values. So I think the reasons these people don't have the legal way of coming to the UK is because people think that they don't assimilate to the Western values. It's only when they come to the UK and they work extremely hard that people realize, okay, you know, my next door neighbor is Muslim, he's from Afghanistan.
Right.
He's lovely. On Eid day, he brings me food. Samosas, right?
Yeah.
In Ramadan, they observe, they're hungry, but they still come out and take my beans out for me. Or if my wife is sick, they will come and ask me. It's until then they realize, because what are the Western values? The Western values are exactly the same as, pretty much the same as ours. You have to. I
disagree. I think Muslim values are far, far superior than any other ideology.
But if you actually look at the benefit system, that was from Muslims.
It's true, you're right. Yep.
The first Khalifa, he implemented that. Okay, we get benefits here. NHS, Muslim system. The universities, Muslims. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about the recent liberalism that everyone has, that everyone wants to get naked and walk out. I'm talking about the real English values, when people held on to these values.
But I think, if you look at these values, I think mainstream, again, liberalism has taken over the world. And I'm not, just to reiterate, I don't want the audience misconstruing. All of these people from these countries, I do believe, are refugees, and they're here to prevent death, prevent bloodshed, from being bombed. What I'm saying is, if you're exporting liberalism to the world, where you're allowed to be naked in a country, you're allowed to go and drink publicly, you're allowed to be whatever sexuality you'd like to be. If you're exporting that around the world, minorities in other countries, like these countries, where if you were one of those things, you'll be oppressed and suppressed and even harmed, you would want to come to this country. So I just want to reiterate to the audience, I'm not saying these people are coming here to get naked, but the liberal ideology of the individual being sovereign and to do whatever they want. This is an anecdote, but I've heard, and a lot of people have told me, that you've got people from the Arab world coming here and doing extreme debauchery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they come to London and they do all the things that they can't do in the Middle East.
I can't say that.
But this is the anecdotal evidence that I've heard and seen not seen firsthand per se, but this is what I hear from like Arab natives and other people, particularly around the central London. They come here and they party and then they go back. So this is what liberalism promotes. Do what you want to do, feel good, provided that you don't harm anyone else. Your body is your temple. You're completely sovereign. And that's what I meant by you can come and be naked. And there is a naked parade here. I'm sure there is. There must be one. Anyway, I don't want to digress, and I do want to go back to the very, very, very profound points that you've made. But I do think all of the things that you've said about values and about these people coming in, perhaps even a double standard. And again, we must not forget that these countries are a byproduct of Western foreign policy, Western intervention. And I'm not saying it's entirely the West's fault, but when you prop up governments and factions and then depose of governments as and when you please because it doesn't align to your benefits, then that has a reaction. More acutely, though, someone like George, for argument's sake, he's my guest, so I'm not going to speak about him, but people that sort of fit within that demographic, yes, I do think there's a problem of ignorance, a lack of intellect or not looking in the right places, but also I think it's arrogance. I was on Instagram earlier on today, just doing something on Flickr, and there was this Englishman. He was on the Tube, Underground Tube, and I'm not sure when it was recorded, and he was sitting there and he was, you know, being quite racist and saying, this is my country, I'll do what I like. And his entire outfit probably cost 20 quid. I mean, honestly, but where does he get this arrogance from? That I'm white, this is my country.
Birthright.
Birthright. So he's probably 60, 55, 60. And the language he was using, you know, no Englishman, the middle class or people that are educated and affluent that represent most of this country would be proud of him representing. He certainly wouldn't be an ambassador. But there is people like that in this country. Where do they get that birthright and arrogance? So you can't teach these people. You can't with arrogance. Arrogance is very dangerous. Ignorance you can teach. Ignorance is lack of information. Arrogance is birthright, or I'm superior than you because I'm white, or this is my country. How do you teach those people? You can't.
You can't, but we can do our best to educate. And I think that's exactly what we're doing today. I agree that the sentiment towards the far right, within the far right is, well, as your guest said, the country is going to the dogs, which I found hilarious. And then you push them on, well, what does that mean? Well, you know, we're not white anymore. What does that have to do with anything? Right? So, I mean, listen, if you're going to invade countries, right, their people are going to come over, right? And he himself said he's English. He would consider himself English, but you yourself would be British. So what he did was conflate between two things, being English and being British. Being English is an ethnicity. Being British is your nationality. You and I are British Asians. We're not English. We'll never be English. No matter how many generations we go down. The gentleman who came is not English himself. He's got Indian and he's got Jamaican in him. So what do you consider English? I mean, who is English anymore? Are you a Viking? Because we were invaded by Vikings, or are you a Roman? So what are you? Define English. There's no such thing. So what we can hold on to is being British and what the British values are. Yes, there are negative connotations being British, but there's huge positives of being British as well. If you walk down, we're in Whitechapel, if you walk down outside, you find every skin color possible. Right? Every ethnicity possible. I'm speaking Chinese, Indian, Pakistani, Nigerian, anything that you can imagine, right? That's a beautiful thing. I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think their fear of that we're not white anymore stems from they know what they did to others it's going to happen to them. So they know what they did to the countries that they invaded and committed, if we can use the word genocide, because, you know, Bengal famine was a genocide. They fear that the same thing will happen to them in their own country. And I think that's where it stems from.
Enoch Powell,
God heavens.
Enoch Powell's infamous speech. River of Blood speech? River of Blood speech. So he attacked the black man, I believe, at the time, and said the black man will have the upper hand over the white man. And this was in the 1960s, I believe? 70s, something
around that time.
Around that time. And that's the thing is, and I try to explain this to George, that we as men, we carry inherent attributes as men. And if we look on the flip side, the opposite gender, women, women are naturally protective of their cubs or their children.
That's correct.
So if a woman is in a situation where she thinks that she can't protect her children, she will evacuate immediately. Men, on the other hand, are protected in different ways. We protect through defense and violence. This is it, and to an extent, and our scope of thinking is about power and land grab. Yep, and I think that's inherent in us. We can only wean off that through education. You know, we both have prejudices. You know, we both have prejudice, and the only way to overcome prejudices is through education and really becoming a better person.
Absolutely.
Really, that's what it is.
That's correct.
That's what it comes down to. So the white people in this country that are saying that this country is gone to the dogs, and really, if one may interpret that as this country is no longer white. And I think George specifically said that this country in 10 years' time would be Muslim. And then he said something along the lines of the person that's running the education system now is a Muslim guy.
Yeah.
And I didn't press him on this because I wanted to continue, but 10 minutes ago,
Yes.
in that conversation, if you go and look back at that conversation, he said it's all for meritocracy.
Yeah.
It shouldn't matter who you fall in love
Absolutely.
with and all the rest of it.
Absolutely.
But this guy is the best man for the job.
Absolutely.
But because he's Muslim
Yeah.
and he doesn't align to what image he sees or he can identify with, that became a problem. So where am I going with this? There will be a segment of this country, and I'm not blaming them at the end of the day because I understand human nature. It's like, for instance, Pakistan, Bangladesh, whatever it may be, right? If there was a huge influx of non-South Asian people that didn't speak the language or didn't look like the Bangladeshi or the Pakistani or the Indian sub-Indian continent, how do you think men will feel there?
Well,
There will be a portion of men.
Yep.
Let's be honest here.
Yep.
They'll say, kick them out of our country.
Yep.
They're this, they're that. They're the others, the alien race. Kick them out. So we can't overlook that because that will always exist.
Yes, but we had that, didn't we, for almost 200 years when the Brits came over,
Yeah,
and I mean, that's one thing I don't understand. You don't want brown or black people to come live in your country, but you're very happy to go and invade and live in their countries for over 200 years and colonize. One of the things that frustrates me the most, the subcontinent, which consists of Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, used to be called India back in the day, had 24% of the world's GDP before the Brits arrived.
Yep.
When the Brits left, they had around 4%. They plowed 20% of our GDP. And that comes up to, don't fact check me on it, but I think it comes up to about 40 trillion pounds. And I'm not talking billions, I'm talking trillions of pounds, right? Now, you can't just be like, okay, fine, we invaded you, which I think George did. He said, yeah, but we didn't go over there to work. What did you think you went over there to do? You took all the high positions, you divided a rule, you put Muslims against Hindus against Sikhs against Christians. And even till this day, that policy is still in there. They left Kashmir, as we know, recent events, Pakistan and India, for another war on Kashmir. They left it on purpose because they knew, that this area, these two countries will fight over it. If Germany and Britain and France, who fought 2 world wars, can have free movement, why can't Pakistan and India have free movement? We have to think of that. These are the gifts that the imperialism has left us. These are the psychological implications of imperialism. So no, I don't agree with it that, oh no, if loads of brown or black people came over and I need to be protective. No, you've been doing that all that time. And this goes back to the point. I think their fear comes from they think we're going to do to them what they did to us and our forefathers. I think that's where the fear comes in.
So it's got nothing to do with, we're in East London now, the entire parade is owned by a non-English man with the shop fronts with different languages and so you're saying that they're just not upset about the landscape change, the fact that if you walked into East London or Bradford or other parts of Birmingham to some degree, that it's not, and I've heard them say Islamabad and stuff like that, making racial...
Oh, that was Piers Morgan, actually.
Yeah.
Piers Morgan said that. Yeah.
Piers Morgan. So when you've got high-level journalists like him, scumbag like him, saying these sort of racial snidey comments, alluding to racial snidey comments, saying that this country's changed because the colour's different.
Yeah.
I can understand. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm merely here to understand, be objective, right?
Yep.
I can understand if East London was primarily white, maybe 35, 40 years ago. Now it's primarily South Asian. Yes, there's other minorities. So you've got like the Somali community, African community, and, the African, but primarily South Asian, right? And if an Englishman that lived here 30, 40 years ago, perhaps lives not even in deep Essex, lives further, in Dorset or wherever it may be, and he came here to visit his elderly mum and he realizes the complete change, the transformation of the demographic, would you say it's understandable for him to be in a bit of a culture shock saying, what happened to my country?
I would understand that he would have a culture shock
Yep.
if he was coming to look after his elderly mum until he takes her to the NHS. And then all he will see will be brown and black people looking after his elderly mum. And I think that's where his ignorance will just drop. Like, okay, you know what? Fine. I've got 10 more kebab shops and curry houses down the street.
Yep.
Yeah. But these kebab shops and curry houses, their children, the first generation and second generations, have come and have enriched us with their knowledge. They've enriched us with their services. That's my perspective. That's how I would want that person to feel. Obviously, we can't break down the arrogance, as you said. And there will be a population in the UK that will feel, no matter what we do, they will say, look, white means white and it has to be right. No, for them, there's nothing that we can do. We can only present them with facts and figures.
Yeah.
We can present them with any positive spin that we can give. We wouldn't be able to change their mind whatsoever. So I think that place is just a lost cause. If I bring Islam in a little bit, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and I'm paraphrasing, that they've got seals on their hearts. Yep, on their minds and eyes and hearts. They're seals. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that, what can we do?
Nothing.
So I just leave it that. If I can educate, yes. If you're not going to listen, then you to yourself and me to myself.
Beautiful answer, by the way. And I think that was actually, I don't usually say this, but the response with the NHS, particularly the NHS, and you look at the diversity of it, and all of these professionals are from foreign countries. And they study hard. I think you told me in a conversation over the phone that these people from underdeveloping countries, because of the plight and the poverty in their countries, and if you look at the kids in this country, I'm sorry, most kids in these countries proverbially need a slap around the ear. You know, they get free education and they still can't speak better than the foreign man that comes in and has worked hard, has probably worked from the age of 10.
Yes, that's correct.
Far more superior in terms of intellect than, because we take for granted. We're mollycoddled. Everything's given to us in this country. You know, we bunk school. We have no respect and no manners for our teachers. And that is disgusting. And I'm not saying I'm sort of aloof to that. I was in a system where it was cool to be, you know, disrespectful to your teachers to some degree.
Absolutely.
I came from a good upbringing.
Yep.
So, but even then, the sort of general norm and culture of this society is not to respect teachers, not to really do well in education, particularly from poorer backgrounds. That's not emphasized. The middle and the upper class, they read books. We grew up not reading books, right? We grew up, you know, running around in streets doing crazy stuff.
That's true.
And that's the disparity here. That, you know, the doctors and even yourself, you were born in Pakistan.
I was born in Pakistan. I came over when I was 10.
How old are you? 32?
I'm turning 32 in August.
So we're the same age, right? Think about it. You've come to this country at a certain age, worked your socks off, and you're a businessman now. You own your own firm, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah? How many of us can say that? How many of us have that zeal? We're more concerned about watching Love Island. I use this analogy because it's sort of, I'm so disgusted by it.
Yeah. But what I would say to that is this, I don't want to be extremely negative for our generation. What I would say is, if you look at the lower population or lower class, they've been socially engineered on purpose to stay in poverty. There's no incentive for them to come out of poverty. And successive governments over time, and I'm talking about conservative governments, I'm not a big fan of Labour myself at the moment.
Sure.
They cut down, 20,000 police officers off our street, right? They took down all the social clubs that people used to have.
Right.
I grew up in a time where my peers around me, after school, we would go to a social club, and it would keep us off streets. Kids nowadays don't have that. They don't have a role model to look forward to or look up to. So if they are stuck in a cycle of poverty and the government isn't giving them an incentive to come out of it, natural instinct will be, how would I make money? And then they fall into the wrong hands. So as much as I'd say, yes, the children in the country need a slap around the ear, as you said, I think it's to do with the social engineering that they've been put into that they can't escape, unfortunately.
I have to politely, and again, this goes into a social science, sociological debate. The social engineering, I sympathize with your point, but we are from... Do you remember when David Cameron came out and said multiculturalism doesn't work? Do you remember?
I think so.
Yeah, multiculturalism doesn't work. We need an overlooking culture, the British culture, and everyone needs to assimilate. I think multiculturalism is a beautiful thing.
It is.
And to double down on that, you're saying that, you're right, granted, services are not there, poverty plays a part, and all of these things, wherever in the world you are, whether it's in the first world, perhaps even America, here, in Europe and Greater Europe, wherever there's poverty, there are sort of, whether it's drug use, violence, and all of that.
Yeah.
That's hand in hand. I get that. But my point about multiculturalism is we're from communities, respectable communities.
I agree.
And regardless of how poor we are,
Yes.
or how rich we are,
Yes.
our communities should take accountability of their
agree.
kids.
I agree.
So you've got kids running around stabbing each other. It's disgusting.
I agree.
And I'm not here to blame, saying, oh, it's this color and that color, because ultimately, the mother that bore that kid and raised that kid to be stabbed at 15, 17, 18 and die prematurely or untimely. It was his time. We believe that as Islam, but just from a perceptive point of view, untimely, regardless of the color of that mother's heart is broken in so many different pieces. And I believe we have to blame the cultures these children come from, because the cultures and the societies that we're from, we need to take accountability. If our argument's sake, and it's different now, right? The law protects, but if I, for argument's sake, see a small South Asian kid, with his trousers below his knees, for argument's sake, or he's talking a certain way, and he's talking to me, I'm like, do you want to slap? This is disrespectful. Did you not go to school? We shouldn't be promoting it. But obviously this is perhaps this is a utopia. But if we held accountability within our own communities, regardless of our level of financial ability, think about us, right? And it's another thing, South Asian guys are not in football, right? Because our parents, despite them not being able to speak English properly or doing menial jobs, education. Go and get a degree. You must have a degree. Because they understood education. These are poor people from poor countries. But we had strong communities. And also, it's another thing, shame. If my parents caught me selling drugs, my dad would disown me.
That's true.
He'd disown me.
That's true, yes.
He'd be like, why are you bringing such shame to my family? So I think all communities, regardless of colour, all communities need to adopt that mentality.
I couldn't
The
agree
nuclear family mentality. And we sort of digress here, but I think it's a very important point to make. I just want to turn your attention to the screen.
Of course, no problem.
Beautiful conversation. I feel like we're running out of time. So if you see here, India was the most common non-EU nationality for work and study. And I think you touched on this. And the NHS is a testament to this.
Absolutely.
And not just the NHS, other sectors in our economy, the financial sector, Indians, Nigerians, Pakistani, Chinese, Zimbabweans. So we've got South Asia and East Asia. And then we've got, are they Central Africa? East Africa? No, not West.
Southern Africa.
Southern Africa. So we've got Nigerians and Zimbabweans. Now, all of these countries, from my interactions with people from these countries, and we can extend it to other countries as well, right? So African, South Asian, we come from very, like I said, educational backgrounds. We put a huge emphasis on education, right? And these people, I haven't got the facts and figures, and maybe you have, that do come here for study and work visas, make up a huge number of our the financial service that we export, make a huge number of that up. Are the people that allow for us to export it. Just talk to us about that, because this is what Reform Party are umming and ahhing about.
This is an interesting topic, to be fair. So from top of my head, I know that the students alone, and I'm not talking about the skilled worker visas or the spouse visas who come to the UK and work, students alone bring around £40 billion in our economy. That's £40 billion gap that Reform Party wants us to have. Okay, where would we get the 40 billion from? We don't know. Now, let me just get a few facts, and I'm just going to bring my phone up because I was doing a bit of research the other day. Let's have a look. So we've got tax revenue. So economic impact of immigration. So tax revenue annually, immigrants bring in £20 billion to the UK economy annually.
To date,
job creation, 400,000 jobs created by immigrants. Okay, GDP contribution, 6.6 billion from entrepreneurship, right? And this is the main one that I wanted to look at was a lot of people from who are immigrants who've come over on a skilled worker visa or a student visa. They become entrepreneurs, and they contribute immensely to our society. Not only are they entrepreneurs, they will hire people who are born or are British or English, and then they will provide them with a source of income. So what I'll do is walk you through a journey of an immigrant, a normal immigrant, right? So let's say I'm a young man in Pakistan and I want to come to the UK to obtain education, right? So I'll come to the UK on a student visa. So I'll do my 3 years degree, 1 year degree. Within that time, I'm only allowed to work 20 hours, except term times. So 20 hours you work, you contribute towards your tax and your national insurance. Once my student visa is finished, I will apply for something called a PSW, which is postgraduate visa, basically. And within that time, you can apply for a skilled worker job if you can't get one. You can either get a PSW or you can get for a skilled worker visa. Okay. So what is a skilled worker visa? It's the jobs that the UK lacks, that the people in the UK don't have the ability to do or don't have the capacity to do.
I don't want to do.
Or don't want to do. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say don't want to do because these are quite high level jobs.
Right. Okay.
So sure. you're talking about you have to earn around £38,500. So I wouldn't say they don't want to do it. They probably do want to do it, but it's not. They don't have the right. Exactly. They don't have the capacity to do it. So the immigrants would then take these jobs on, and they will do these jobs for 5 years until they can obtain their indefinite leave to remain. Once they get the indefinite leave to remain, they will either keep it or apply for British citizenship. Okay, that's a normal process of an immigrant. One of the normal routes to become a British citizenship. Now we're talking about the fees that they have to pay to the universities, the fees that they have to pay to the Home Office, which are ridiculous. The fees they have to pay to get the skilled worker visas, their taxes throughout the 5 years. Mind you, they pay national insurance. And they also have to pay something called the immigration health surcharge, which means that they're paying for their national insurance. They're paying
NHS.
for the NHS.
Yeah.
So it's a double whammy for them. But they still contribute. They still pay. Once all that's done, they pay fees, which is ridiculous for indefinite leave to remain. And they pay further fees for naturalization. So purely on fees, and I'm not even talking about solicitors' fees, you're looking at upwards of £20,000 just on fees. And that's Home Office fees. And I'm not even talking about anything here and there.
Wow. So let's use that case study. So he comes to the university, Pakistani boy or girl, comes to this country. Yeah. It can be any, right? Aspiring people come to his university. What is the university fee per year for a non-British student?
I think it's about 13,000, 14,000. So it's almost double of what a normal.
So it's about 18,000 then, because now I think British students are paying 10,000.
Yes.
So
yeah.
say let's ballpark figure 20,000. So over 3 years.
I think it's about 15,000.
Okay, 15,000.
Yeah.
Let's even say 12,000.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over the course of 3 years, 12, 24, 36 grand, £36,000. Then they're allowed to work 20 hours. Not to mention they're paying the landlord for renting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the landlord is making a lot of money, which I'm quite cheesed off about.
Yeah.
Because they're pushing up the prices of rent.
Yeah.
So we've got the 36,000, the paying the landlord, and not to mention they're further borrowing money for their upkeep because the 20 hours isn't sufficient. Yeah. The 20 hours they can't even afford the rent.
Yeah. Well, borrowing money not from the UK government.
Not from the UK government. Just to clarify, from family back home, right? So more and more money is being funneled into the country. You've got the solicitor fees.
Yep.
Yeah. Then you've got so you've got the Home Office charges, which amount to about £20,000.
Yep.
Not to mention the tax revenue they're paying after they qualify and filling these specialist jobs that the British can't do. And ultimately, we export financial services. So essentially, what you're saying, and I'm going to act stupid here, or maybe I'm stupid.
No.
As a layman, if we stop immigrants now, martial law, every single immigrant, if you're not a British citizen or you weren't born here, get out of the country. Would the square mile in the city, which is 2 miles from here, would that stop functioning?
No. Yes and no. I would say yes and no. Yes, because obviously it's a hard one. Because if we stopped immigration, what are you going to do with the people that are already here? So yes, in a way that it will keep functioning because the people who are already here will keep it functioning.
So I spoke to a recruitment consultant.
Yep.
And their business is to employ people
Yep.
into very specialist jobs. And they said to me, quite frankly, English guy, if it wasn't for immigrants, firstly, I make a lot of money. If it wasn't for immigrants, I would not be able to fill these posts.
That's true.
That's what he said to me.
Yeah, no.
And these are people from India,
Yeah.
from Nigeria, Pakistan, China, and I'm not sure about Zimbabwe, but they come here to study, right? So that's the first thing. Okay, you're saying it may not cease to function. I'm just trying to put the reform hat on, right? Stop it. Stop immigration. Stop everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying they're being xenophobic or anything like that.
Yeah.
But there is a part of this country that white is right. White is white.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not going to talk about that.
No,
So immigration stops. What about the universities?
They will collapse.
Who's going to fund the
Yeah,
universities?
absolutely.
I think I was the last year where it was capped at £3,000, and I was an idiot, so I dropped out. I'm still reeling.
No, absolutely fine. No, you've
still
done well
really-
for yourself, alhamdulillah.
And if universities are saying under the caveat or the premise that we need to increase British student fees because it's not sustainable, yeah. So from £3,000, it was free in 1993. I think I was the last year in 2011 or 12 or something like that. There was £3,000, and now it's £9,000.
Yeah.
And this is just for sustainability.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could call the immigrants out. No more student visas. No more work visas. No more visas. They come and contribute 45,000 as opposed to our measly 25,000, right? Which is funded by the government.
Yeah.
And some of us don't even pay it back.
Yeah.
Not to mention the grants that we get and the bursaries, right? Honestly, it's extortion. I don't know what system. Anyway, I'm not here to. I'm not
No,
a
that's
policymaker on that caption. So if we stop that now, if we go with the undertone of xenophobia, this country is gone to the dogs. Our parades, our shop parades. I can't spot the white guy in London. Spot the white guy in Stratford. Spot the white boy in Stratford. That's what George said.
Spot the white kid.
White kid.
That's even worse. You're talking about children.
Yeah, white kid in
What does
Stratford.
the kid do to you?
But this is the sentiment that he has, and I'm sure a lot of people share his sentiment. I wouldn't say a majority of people, but people do. So if we stopped and we did martial law, what would happen to this country? He's saying, sorry, and I just want to add to this, the hourly wage now, I think, the minimum wage in London or across the country is about £9-10, around that.
Yeah.
If we lost that much in taxes, say about, I'd say, again, I'm not an economist, but if we lost £100 billion every year, it'd probably be more. The ramifications would be far more, incalculable. The hourly wage that he's complaining about, if it's £10 an hour now, it'd be about £5 an hour.
Yeah.
Crime rates will shoot up. Forget the coloured people doing crime. Everyone will be doing crime. Lidl will be looted. Sorry, I've gone on. But I'm trying to understand the logic. I'm trying to be objective.
Yeah.
It's all good and well, two South Asian men saying, oh, they're racist and xenophobic. That's not what we've done this episode.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand their perspective.
I think you have to go back to facts and figures again.
Absolutely.
So with parties like Reform and Britain First and whatever you had before them, they throw numbers around to catch people's eyes. Now I'm going to go into one of the ones. Nigel Farage stood in front of a bus that said, if we go for Brexit, £350 million per week will go into NHS. Where is that £350 million, Nigel Farage? And then it will say, well, we haven't really left the EU. What do you guys want? What more do you want? We stopped freedom of movement. We have to stand in queues at the airport now.
Yeah, it's annoying.
It's annoying, right? We're begging to have deals with different countries to our disadvantage. I don't want to go too much into that, but to our disadvantage, we're trying to make deals trying to make it look like that we still got some level of authority in the world. And with the tariffs that's happening right now with the US,
He's playing ping pong.
absolutely. But if we were with the EU, we had a much stronger stance against the US. But what we're not doing right now is we're just appeasing to whoever's coming to us with a deal, basically, and we're like, fine. So I think one of the deals that that's being made, I'm not too sure if it's fully there yet or it's fully confirmed, but you can get, you'll have Indian residents coming over, Indian workers coming over to the UK, and they wouldn't have to pay national insurance. Right? Now, me as a British person, I would think, is that fair? For other people who come from, I don't know, Bangladesh, Nigeria, wherever they're coming from, they have to pay their national insurance. That's what I mean. We're making deals that are not probably beneficial for our economy to an extent. So that's one thing. The other thing is, we will have a massive black hole in not just our GDP, but human resources. We need active people to work in our NHS. We need active people to be our doctors, engineers, lawyers, school teachers. Okay? You take all these people out. Who's going to educate our children? Who's going to drive our buses? Right? Who's going to police your children? Who's going to make your meal? You're going to call up and ask for curry. Who's going to make that? Right? So it's the economic side as well as the human side, the human effect would have. And I think it'd be devastating for the UK. But as I said, these parties, they make these flashy numbers, huge numbers, 350 million, gazillion pounds that the UK would gain if we let go of immigration. But if you actually get to the hard truth and you look down and actually look into it, none of it is actually true.
I've just realised we're hurtling out of time, and there's so many more things.
No problem.
There's so many more things I want to ask you, but I think there's one of the things that I just want to latch onto. So the British government have a deal with India, that come to our country. Essentially, that's what they're saying. Come to our country. Yep, you don't have to pay
to a certain extent.
So to a certain extent, right? Which I think is outrageous, generally speaking. To say, but this is an economic deal.
Yeah.
Yep, you don't have to pay national insurance. So I'm just going to look into the camera. To those people that do vote reform and so on and so forth, if we are finding it hard to get the best tariffs all around the world, which means trade deals, which businesses need in order to stay afloat and for the country to function, right? So we export stuff, and I'm being patronizing here. So we export stuff very little, but we import stuff as well, right? If we don't have the best trade deals, we're paying more. We're paying through our noses for prices in Tesco's and Lidl and wherever else you shop. So if the country has said that India gets not a blank check, but you can come to the country, and there is a lot of Indian people in this country now, which I've visibly noticed. And if they're being told that you don't have to pay national insurance, and the government are promoting immigration because of the economy, how do you expect to shut up borders? Because our business is going to go down the drain. We're going to tank. Essentially, we're saying, what I'm saying here is this: if the government know that immigration is bad, and all of the governments are saying now, they're lining up, queuing up, saying, we need a zero surplus, or we need to reduce, there's a deficit now. There's more people coming in than out. If we try to make that zero, because there are British people like me and yourself and the white people that are leaving, there's an exodus. The rich people are going to Dubai and everywhere around the world. So if we try to, balance the books per se, the economy will take a crippling tumble. That's my point in a long-winded way.
I would like to add one thing though.
Sure.
What I would say is well done to India for making that deal, right?
I'm a bit annoyed.
No, well done to India for making a deal, to be fair.
Why?
Because when it comes to trade, they've got the upper hand. We were forced to make that deal, right? They've done really well for their citizens. And these people will come over and they will still contribute.
They will, yeah.
They will still contribute. Yeah. National insurance is a small part.
Yeah.
But they've got the upper hand. They've done something really smart.
Yeah.
And as a Pakistani, I'm saying well done to India. They've done well for their country. And I think the point I'm trying to make is we've allowed ourselves to be in a situation where we're getting the rough hand.
We've hamstrung ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's not a problem for the white British or the Asian British. That a lot of the blame lays with the government and how they handle our foreign policies, or how they handle the books, and how they handle anything or deals. So I'm not blaming the people. I'm saying the government should have a better handle on that.
The economic viability of our country and our way of life, for us to work 9 to 5, and some of us, and to be fair, cost of living is through the roof. But if the cost of living is bad here, could you imagine in other countries how bad it is? But even then, most of us, alhamdulillah, if you're Muslim,
Alhamdulillah,
are doing okay.
Yeah.
We can still eat 3 meals a day. We still can keep the electric on.
Yeah.
Most of us still have a roof over our head, and regardless of what color you are in this country.
Yeah.
Should we, and I think the long and short of it is really, and to be fair, like I said, I think we shouldn't be generally as a country be giving out, brownie points to people that bring us more money. But like you said, we're in a crippling state where we have, our backs are against the wall, right? Our backs are against the wall, and we have to make these concessions to countries. But when they come over, and like you said, you've abundantly made it clear that they bring immense economic benefits and so on and so forth.
Yes.
We carry on with that repeat cycle. So in 5 years' time, I can sort of envision the government at the time will stand up on the pulpit and say, oh, this country is out of control, immigration is through the roof, but you're doing backhanders.
Yeah.
Anyway, finally, the Reform Manifesto, net zero immigration. I mean, to be fair, if Nigel Farage came, I'd love to pick his brains. He probably won't. But I do want to understand how he's going to achieve net zero immigration and lower taxes.
That's the myth.
Yeah.
That I would love to read about it, and I think
I hope it's lower taxes. It means lower tax for you and I.
well, to an extent, but I don't believe in fallacies.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't believe everything that our politicians say.
Yeah.
I believe that Nigel Farage came up with his budget, and it was picked apart and laughed at by everyone because they said nothing adds up. So yeah, as going back to my point, they bring out these flashy titled headlines and numbers, but there's no real substance behind it. And when you go really deep into it, do you know who they blame, Ali? They blame the immigrants because it's been that same thing that the immigrants are this. I mean, even if you go back to they did divide and rule in other countries, and I think they've brought that same ethos back into the UK. It's divide and rule between the upper class and the lower class. Okay, even if you go back to slavery, the slaves had much more in common with the lower white class than they had with the upper class. Those lower white class were the ones who were helping them escape or giving them food. Okay, why is that changed? Because the upper class have diverted our attention from, okay, we should be building more houses, but it's not that anymore. It's very much, okay, that immigrant's taking your house, go after him.
Any final words before I wrap this up?
What I would say is, if you do have any questions about immigration or how it affects you, do your own research, please. Okay, do primary research. Look into it, deep down, look into it and see whether immigrants actually help you or not. Because I know from a professional, they provide a lot for us. And we're not, me and as an immigrant, myself, we're not your enemies. We're your friends next door.
Thank you very much, Brother Hamad. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for debunking some of the myths. And I think we've had a great conversation, and I hope the audience enjoy it. I'd just like to end on this, a little bit of a curveball. As a son of an immigrant that was born here, it would be completely, it's an outcry, a far outcry if I would turn around and said, oh, stop letting the immigrants in. It wouldn't be within my fabric. It wouldn't be my nature. I'm the product of an immigrant. I'm not English. Neither is he, right? So I'm not going to turn around and say, stop letting immigrants in, because I'm not racist. I'm not saying people that are saying to stop letting immigrants in are racist. But there are some that with the undertone of xenophobia and racism. But I do believe, as a British person that has lived here all my life, this country is filling up because we're not building houses, because we're living on top of each other now. High rise is the new thing now. What happened to the good old days where you had a garden and a house? So they're my reasons why I think immigration should be stemmed. Also, immigrants coming in and they're sort of living for them to a room, whether it's students or on work visas, because they have to make ends meet. Landlords are exploiting them and equally exploiting us. So I'm coming at it from an economic perspective, from my pockets. Undeniably, without a shadow of a doubt, as Brother Hamad just said, immigrants bring immense economic benefits to this country. And for those that want to curtail and stop immigrants just for the sake of it, this economy will take a tumble. Our minimum wages will take a tumble. Our lifestyles will take a tumble. No more going out for a curry and spending 50 quid. No more not working the weekends. No more doing anything. Thank you very much for watching. Next week, we have with a heavy heart, a very powerful episode where a brave sister will come on and talk about how her very young husband committed suicide, and she'll talk about what happened in their marriage and what ensued, essentially the suicide. So we'll see you next week, and hopefully we can do her some justice. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.